May I please request everyone to be seated? Yeah, hi. I am Nidhi Maheshwari, and I am the Chief Operating Officer of CUTS Institute of Regulation and Competition. I would be the MC for today now. And you have had a very interesting session earlier. Now we continue with that, and we take you to the next session, which is Land Transportation Corridors, Regional Networks for Trade and Development. For this session, we have the moderator as Mr. Rajeev Malhotra, who's the chairman and MD of RITES India. He's had a vast experience in this field, and their organization is doing a lot of work in the transportation sector. They have already done this in about 55 countries. And now I would like to request Mr. Malhotra to please come on the dais. And we have our speakers for the day, Mr. Joseph George. May I please request Mr. George to come to the stage? Mr. Paris. Mr. Meitei. A very warm welcome to all the speakers. Mr. Zorwin. Mr. Amit Kapoor, please. Okay. Mr. Chakravorty. So I welcome all the speakers and our moderator for this session. And before we start the session, may I please request everybody who's sitting at the back to please come ahead, because we have parallel sessions going on in other halls. So I believe many people must have left for some interesting other sessions also. So we can just move a bit ahead in the hall. And now I would like Mr. Rajeev Malhotra to take over the session.
Thank you, Nidhi. Good morning to all of you. I'm very happy to be with you, sharing our views on the connectivity issues. Our company is working almost in all the countries in BIMSTEC, some countries in ASEAN and Africa and Latin America as well. Most of the projects we have worked on are transportation solutions related projects, whether freight trains, metros, airports, highways. Closely working in BIMSTEC region also, we have good experience of really the targets and what difference it has made to the transportation, tourism, and what lot needs to be done. I'm very happy to introduce the panel on the dais today. We have eminent speakers representing industry, government, academics, etc. So I'll introduce Mr. Joseph George, is Senior Research Associate, South and Southwest Asia Office of United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific. Mr. Joseph. To his left is Mr. Paris Kharel. He is Research Director, South Asia Watch on Trade, Economics and Environment from Nepal. Welcome to you. Then we have Mr. Ibohal Meitei. He is Professor and Director from Manipur Institute of Management Studies, Manipur University. Welcome, sir. We have Mr. Thet, Director, Department of Highways, Government of Myanmar. Welcome to you. Mr. Amit Kapoor, Honorary Chairman, Institute for Competitiveness, New Delhi. Then Mr. Tapan Kumar Chakravorty, he is Chairman and Additional Secretary, Bangladesh Land Port Authority. I'll just give some opening remarks and expect panelists about 5 to 10 minutes first round. Then on our observations, we can give further inputs. Then house can be opened for questions, and some of the questions are already put through the app. With this, I'll say that the connectivity is definitely, there's no need to emphasize the need of connectivity. It is the do or die situation. Unless the connectivity improves, the trade, tourism, and the other conveniences will not happen. I would like to give India's perspective in 1 or 2 minutes and then come to the panelists. India is doing some very mega projects which can have a significant impact on the connectivity through the ports, through the dedicated freight corridors, and then the national highways. One of the biggest programs the country has taken up is investment in 2 mega dedicated freight corridors, where the freight trains are targeted to run at a speed of 100 kilometers per hour. The corridors stretch from Mumbai to Delhi, and then from Delhi to Calcutta. So virtually across the country, we will have 2 line dedicated freight corridors, which connect very important ports like JNPT, and here you have Calcutta, Haldia. And then there will be branch lines which will be connecting other important ports like Paradip, Kandla, etc. Now this mega investment, coupled with the significant investment in highways, is an opportunity to revisit, replan the investments we are thinking of connectivity within the, say, BIMSTEC region or maybe ASEAN region as well. So a container coming to Mumbai can actually travel till Nepal in about 36 hours maximum, whereas currently this may take 15 to 20 days. So with this speed of delivery likely to come very soon, say in about 2 years, these DFCs, we call them, would become operational. These will open up very significant opportunities for all of us in this region. This is one opening remark. Second, our company, of course, we have been associated with several road, rail, and waterways connectivity projects as pre-feasibility, detail engineering stage, and at some points also implementing. One very interesting thing which our company has done for Land Port Authority of India, and I'm very happy that I have our counterpart from Bangladesh, Land Port Authority, Mr. Chakravorty present here. Now this idea is actually not much known to the public so far, because these are just very new projects. But these have been actually done to ease the traffic, ease the smooth clearances of customs, passengers. They have made significant difference to the ground realities. I have seen almost all these projects. These have been launched at very high level in the government to demonstrate that we seriously mean to improve connectivity, and which is very important for the subcontinent. To give an example, Petrapol. Petrapol is one place where there used to be a lot of congestion. The biggest point where surface crossing is happening, about 1.5 million people every year cross through that. Now, if you see Petrapol earlier and what is happening now, it has really facilitated easy movement of goods and passengers. And similar experiment was done, sorry, not experiment, it was a reality. Project was done first at Pakistan border near Atari. This is already operational. We have done 2 projects already in Nepal, 1 project in Myanmar, and 3 at Bangladesh border. The government has given us mandate for about 6 more. So all this indicates that the reality of dedicated freight corridors, highways, as well as the terminals to ease the border crossing, these are definitely very positive and real steps which are going to help trade, industry, people at large, and then the tourism also. There's not much tourism because of the bottlenecks in connectivity. With these opening remarks, I'll, from my left to right, I will proceed with the panelists. And you can give your view on the connectivity as you see the challenges, the solutions, maybe experiences of your countries or elsewhere. And then we can take those issues further. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, Mr. Mehrotra. And you have rightly said that the connectivity issues cannot be overemphasized. The land transport connectivity is one area where we seriously lag behind in this sub-region. And the biggest benefit, of course, will be by way of unlocking the real trade potential of the sub-region, and by that way provide jobs and livelihood opportunities for our population. Well, it's not just about a unilateral increase in our, traditional trade patterns or traditional trade volumes. We also have to be mindful about what is happening in terms of the changes in trade structure, the way trade is organized. Well, if you look at our neighboring sub-region, Southeast Asia, where they experienced an explosion in trade, it's not just an increase in their traditional trading sectors, but a sea change, a transformational change in the way production and trade is organized there. It's about value chains, it's about splitting your production processes very efficiently across geography and being able to connect these production networks through efficient transport networks. In order to be able to do that, the most important factor is your ability to move things around at the least possible cost. So that's the critical importance of connectivity. If you want to see that kind of transformation taking place in our sub-region, we need to be able to do the same, to cut cost. So for that, half-hearted measures here and there are not going to serve us anymore. We need to look at how we can bring forth a complete overhaul of our transport system. And if you talk about complete overhaul, of course the reform portfolio is so large it can't be discussed in a few minutes, but I'll take to concentrate on three things. One is containerization, the second is usage of rail transport, and the third is dry ports or inland container depots or logistic parks or whichever we call it. Well, why these three? Because the way we see it, they are what can be, I'd like to call as cornerstone reforms or reforms with multiple impacts. Take containerization, for instance. So what you now see is we have mostly break bulk cargo moving across our borders where transshipment is necessary. And whenever we have a discussion about changing that system, the excuse that is most often given is about security. Well, we have security issues and for that additional inspection measures and inspection mechanisms needs to be there, and that takes time, and delays are a natural consequence. But if you containerize it, but on the other hand, we also know that there are so many technological solutions available to overcome security issues. Usage of RFID, e-seals, GPS tracking, and so on. But most of these technologies are amenable if only if we have a containerized system of movement. So leveraging technology is possible only if we shift our mode of packaging. Secondly, containerization also helps us to have an easy modal shift, intermodal shift. Well, if we have to do only switch in, the switch of containers between modes at the borders, then it can, quicken the process. Well, what we right now do is, well, transshipment is one aspect of our transportation right now, which we know which takes a lot of time and cost. Instead of completely doing away with transshipment, what we are trying to do right now, it seems that making transshipment more efficient, which is not what we need to do right now. And also, if you containerize, it's again possible to use, well, rail transport. We don't have hardly anything in the name of rail transport in this sub-region right now. Well, once in a while, a few wagon exchanges, BCN wagons or even open-top wagons, but we don't have flatbed rakes being exchanged, carrying containers in this sub-region. Well, there is a huge demand for it. Earlier this year, some of you may have come across this news, that the first container train between India and Bangladesh was run on a trial basis, and after that, the response for that was tremendous, and the trading community demanded for that to be regularized. But a lot of time will pass before that can be done. Now, there are several advantages of rail transport. One is, of course, cross-border transport. When we talk about cross-border transport, it's well, long distance to medium, medium to long distance range that we are talking about, where rail transport makes immense commercial sense. Secondly, it's an environmentally benign, and in the context of sustainable transport, it assumes a special significance. And thirdly, even without a motor vehicle agreement, when it comes to rail transport, we can avoid transshipment being done at the borders and remove the need for stoppages at borders. Now, if you take away border procedures, where are they to be done? Of course, then that's where the dry ports come in. Now, for dry ports, inland container processing centers, we have now an instrument in place, that's the UNESCO-led intergovernmental agreement on dry ports, which was tabled in 2013 and ratified in 2016. 6 of the member countries are parties to it. 2 of our member countries have already ratified it. And under that, Bangladesh has undertaken to develop 17 dry ports, India 36, Bhutan and Nepal 6 each, and so on. Well, recently we could do sub-regional workshop here to take an assessment of what are the requirements in this area, based on a recently developed regional framework which talks about the design, planning and operational aspects of dry ports here. And it was seen that the best possible model for dry ports is that they are located, first of all, they are a combination of both logistics as well as manufacturing activities. They should be located, of course, in proximity to inconvenience to reach the international gateways, but also they should be proximate to our production centers. Now, piecing them together, what we are talking here is about containerized rail transport between, say, ICD in country A to ICD in country B. That gives us a new system, and that allows us to plan and implement all the other trade and transport facilitation reforms that we are doing it anchored around the system. So the underlying factor that I would like to highlight is that we need to stop thinking very conservatively about this and stop doing short-term measures, cutting corners here and there, but instead of that, take a long-term view and think about what is good for long-term sustainability of our transport systems. With that, I'll stop, and I'll be happy to take questions later on.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, CUTS, for giving me this forum to express some of my views. Now, the real or perceived lack of progress in SAARC has led to sub-regional and trans-regional initiatives in the region. And in this context, I will be focusing on a particular subset of countries within South Asia, the landlocked countries. There are 3 of them: Bhutan, Nepal and Afghanistan, and drawing on some of my experiences with issues pertaining to Nepal. Now, my contention is that these sub-regional initiatives, trans-regional initiatives, including BBIN, have a potential, actually, tremendous potential to address the needs and concerns of landlocked countries, and I'll explain why. But it's not automatically a given that they automatically will, a determined effort will be required, because these countries have their own, special needs and concerns. Now, let's make no bones about it. India is the driver of these initiatives, and these initiatives are not just a response to real or perceived lack of progress in SAARC. They are also an expression of, let's face it, geopolitics involving the world's 2 largest economies and an emerging economy in the region that has ambition to be a permanent member of the UN Security Council. Now, caught in this geopolitical vortex is our landlocked countries. Now, these landlocked countries would welcome and embrace any initiative, bilateral, sub-regional, trans-regional, regional, and let's not forget multilateral trade facilitation agreement under the WTO, floated by anyone, including floated by India as well as other countries, as long as they address their core issues, basically trade and transit diversification, which will help potentially reduce their trade costs and help possibly to join international value chains. Now, looking at trade diversification, two aspects of trade diversification. One would be intra-regional trade diversification, the other would be extra-regional. Intra-regional means, for example, Bhutan and Nepal, predominantly dependent on India for trade. Over 2/3 of the trade are dependent with India. Diversification of trade within the region would be, for example, expanding trade ties with Bangladesh. And Bangladesh is, I think, on track to become an emerging economy, growing at a brisk pace, huge population. And I mean, scholars up north in China have already pointed out that this is an economy to watch. And mind you, I mean, when they say it, they have a long-term view. They look at 100 years' time. It's not for nothing that has been mentioned in the book by Henry Kissinger. So we have to watch out for Bangladesh as a potential market. And BBIN MVA, or rather BIN, I should say, with Bhutan having left it for the time being, BIN MVA can help Nepal for trade more with Bangladesh, yes, because transshipment needs would be obviated to some extent. And right now, under the current arrangement that we have with India, when we import something from Bangladesh, only Nepali trucks are allowed. Whereas BBIN MVA, if implemented in its spirit, would allow, for example, Bangladesh to travel to Nepal. And that could, studies have shown, reduce some transit time by as long as 12 hours due to some technical reasons. Now, of course, the proof of this MVA pudding will be in its implementation. The protocol that is in the making, to which I'm not privy, I mean, it should be markedly improved, marked improvement upon existing arrangements for it to be meaningful. Now, we should also recognize what MVA can achieve and can't achieve as well. Now, the MVA does not explicitly, talk about transit for third country trade outside the region. For example, Nepal's aspiration to trade with third countries, whether it's importing soybean to produce oil from Malaysia or exporting, say, carpet to the US or to Germany, using ports in, for example, Bangladesh. Now, this is not just a wild idea. For example, we have a standing agreement dating back to as far as 1976, where Bangladesh offered a number of ports to Nepal, but to operationalize those ports, transit through India would be necessary. And this issue has been raised reportedly raised in bilateral negotiations with India. And this MVA could potentially have addressed that. And now, but then MVA is not something that is in a way set in stone as well, because it has a provision for amendment. It's pretty flexible. It has a possibility of amendment 3 years after the signing of it. And this aspect should be considered, because extra-regional trade diversification is at the heart of the development strategy of a landlocked country. Now, yes, BBIN MVA being to some extent a non-binding agreement, because the will versus shall, phraseology in the agreement is not just a matter of academic interest. People have pointed out that there is a possibility that it will be just reduced to a like best endeavors type of agreement. Now, to prevent that, yes, we need provision of auxiliary services, for example, issuance of timely permits to operators, including vehicle operators, licenses on a time-bound, predictable manner. That will be crucial. And needless to say, harmonization of rules on vehicles, customs procedures, road standards. There are about a dozen or so international conventions. South Asian countries are party to only a few of them. And when they are party to some common agreements, they are party to different versions of the agreements. Now, implementation of this agreement, again, would require capacity, resources. Now, there is a potential to link this with the trade facilitation agreement under the WTO as well. For example, LDCs can self-designate certain trade facilitation provisions that they think are important, that they would like to implement, but are not able to implement due to certain capacity constraints, resource constraints, technical constraints. and they can self-designate those provisions under category C. And there is a potential to synergize these harmonization issues under the Sub-Regional Cooperation Initiative with the TFA. Now there's a question of funding, right? As far back as in 2015 when MVA came into being, some 30 transport connectivity projects worth about $8 billion had been identified. Now the question is who is going to fund it? Now a hackneyed solution would be yes, and this is a no-brainer, you mobilize resources from private sector, public sector, and multilateral agencies. Now, I think the key thing is to consider all possible sources, including, for example, SAARC observers. Now, we have SAARC observers. In ASEAN, they have upgraded it to like dialogue partners. And they are there, not just for like decorative purposes to contribute, and they have been contributed to some extent. Now, if the argument is that BBIN is not a stumbling block to SAARC, but rather a building block towards SAARC, then, I mean, it's in the fitness of things that SAARC observers be also be more actively, involved in helping out with these transportation connectivity projects. And again, I don't know whether it's like politically kosher or politically correct to mention the word AAIB in this forum. China has hardly been mentioned in these discussions, but we can't, ignore China, particularly a landlocked country. How many countries are there in the world with a population of 30 million landlocked between the two countries? And AAIB, Australia is a member of AIIB. India is one of the largest recipients of loan from AIIB. And that could be and ADB, Asian Development Bank, is already partnering with AIIB. And that could be one potential, institution where you can generate funds. Of course, not the only institution, but potential institution. And having said that, there are also plenty of things to do nationally. You see, for example, harmonizing our own documentation processes in each country, and expediting the process of electronically filling of forms, automation of customs within the border, and then setting up a national single window before we can talk about cross-border single window. Now I will stop here, and later we can discuss other issues as and when it arises. Thank you.
Respected moderator, Sri Rajeev Mehrotra, my esteemed panelists, learned delegates, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to you all. Well, I shall be just sharing in this forum about the India's perspective, especially the India's ACIS policy, linking with the BIMSTEC and ASEAN as far as the land transport corridor or land connectivity things are concerned, with a special focus to the northeastern India. And I'm very much thankful to the organizing team for giving me this opportunity. It's a matter of great honor to me. Thanks. Well, all of us are aware about connectivity. In fact, it is one of the important parameters for the development of any region, and especially the economic, social, and so on and so forth. Well, some of the areas where we can just focus as for the land transport corridor things is, as our moderator had mentioned about the tourism, about the people-to-people connectivity, and that way, some of the aspects which the government of India has taken up vis-a-vis South Asian context and Southeast Asia, that is the India-Myanmar Thailand trilateral highway. That is one of the major projects of government of India. It had started from 2002 onwards, and it is almost on the verge of completion, and hopefully by 2021, the entire road could be through. In fact, the Thailand component, Thailand and the Myanmar side, it is almost over. And we have about 1,360 kilometers. From Moreh is the point in India, the border town in Manipur. Then Tamu is another border town in Myanmar. From that, we have to go via Mandalay, Naypyidaw, and to Mayawadi and Mysore of Thailand-Myanmar border. So that construction work is true, and in fact, Moreh to Kaliwa, this is about 149 kilometers. Between that, about 71 bridges are there, of which only 2 is converted to RCC construction, and the remaining 69 bridges are to be completed, and Government of India has already given the tender. The construction work is on. And once it is true, we will be having a seamless connection with Thailand, Myanmar, and India. And for that matter, we can just visualize an important corridor, land connectivity corridor, that can be transformed into corridor of economic cooperation. Maybe that from that roads, Imphal is the capital of Manipur. And from Imphal, we can visualize 2 important corridors, Imphal, Dimapur, Guwahati, and Siliguri. That's another economic corridor we can just situate. And once it touches Siliguri, of course, it can touch the main hinterland of India and touch Bhutan, Nepal, and Bangladesh. And also another corridor we can situate from Imphal to Jiribam, Silchar, then to Agartala of Tripura, then Dhaka, then Kolkata. That could be another corridor we can situate. That way, if this connectivity is improved, and hopefully the people-to-people contact and various other dimensions of trade, commerce could be happening. And that way, the landlocked area of northeastern region, the 98% of the total geographical boundary is bordering with the international boundaries. Only 32 kilometers is connecting in the chicken neck in Siliguri side with the hinterland of India and the northeast. So now, with the India's Act East policy, we are envisioning to have not only the strategic footings, but the economic development and economic cooperation with Myanmar and other ASEAN countries. And when we talk of this regional connectivity, as far as the BIMSTEC and the ASEAN things are concerned, we cannot neglect this IMT highway project, because Myanmar is becoming the land bridge of India to ASEAN and beyond. And this IMT, it can be extended from Thailand to Vietnam via Laos, and from Laos, Cambodia, CLMB, there are certain, this one cluster that can also be linked with this kind of a highway. That's why it's a very, very strategically important aspect that we can just look into. And at the same time, many of the tourists from these Myanmar and the ASEAN countries, they are predominantly Buddhist. They would like to pay a visit to India. As on today, many of the pilgrimage travelers from this region are coming by air from Yangon to Kolkata and to Bodh Gaya or the Varanasi or any other Buddhist shrines. It's a costly affair for many of the common people. If this land connectivity is open up, and then we can visualize the probable increase in the pilgrimage tourism in India. And I'm very much thankful to the government of India and government of Myanmar. Last month, in the last 8 August, the border point, the Moreh-Tamu sector has been opened up for the travelers between the 2 countries with the normal passport and visa. It has been allowed. So that's a good initiative taken up. And also we have integrated checkposts. This is one of the land customs station where the normal tradings can be expedited. However, some of the infrastructural facilities is lacking, especially in the fastening of the customer activities and some of the electronic data interchange, the connectivity, digital connectivity, and some other services to be taken care of. And once it is true, then we will be just having the normal trading activities in this area. And we are also just visualizing the probable aspects on the healthcare facilities. In the entire Southeast Asia, the healthcare facilities, people are going to Bangkok or the Singapore. And now many of the people residing in Myanmar and the other parts of this, this one, Vietnam, Laos, etc., they can also come to India via this route, and Manipur incidentally providing better healthcare services. And as on today, quite a good number of Myanmarese people are coming to Manipur for the medical treatments, etc. And why not to Guwahati and some other? This is how we can just capitalize the benefits out of these land transport corridors if it is developed to the true sense of the term. And at the same time, we can also just see to it about the education once the people-to-people connectivity is enhanced. And when this road is fully operationalized with the 4-lane or the 6-lane, some of the big lorries will be passing. And then what are the resources available in Myanmar or the Northeast, and for that matter, India as a whole, we can just visualize the areas of concern for logistics, warehousing, and also some of the industrialization activities with the establishment of special economic zones. And in fact, for that matter, we can also just see to it in Myanmar, that in Yangon, Talewa, that's an industrial park, is fully operationalized with many of the investment from the foreign countries, and also the Meitei Industrial Park in Mandalay, they are also just, coming up in a big way. And in fact, the distance between Imphal to Mandalay is hardly 480 kilometers. And we can travel, and many instances, government of India has already taken up the agreement to have the bus transfer facilities from Imphal to Mandalay and back. An agreement has been signed, but certain things about the Indian motor vehicle system and Myanmar, that has to be aligned. And once it is true, hopefully we can have a good access to this region. And then I'm sure Myanmar can also be benefited. At the same time, India can also have a strong presence in Myanmar and beyond. This is how we can develop the land connectivity. As on today, India is having connectivity in maritime and air links. And that is one aspect we just see to it. And at the same time, when such kind of a land connectivity is improved, we have to see about the social aspects, the dimensions. The people residing in the border areas, about their women empowerment. Even yesterday we talked a lot about the women things, how they can be empowered, how their economic livelihood be improved. And for that matter, we have to focus on the skill development and the livelihood activities. By passing through these highways, their entire lifestyle could be changed. And that change should be happen in a productive manner. And for that matter, we just would like to have some concern, especially in the skill development of those areas, so that they can get gainful employment out of such transformation happening the world over. However, I must appreciate the connectivity things coming up with BIMSTEC and ASEAN and South Asia, particularly the Bangladesh, that all the landlocked areas, Nepal and Bhutan, the Motor Vehicle Act, if it is signed, why not it can be extended to the BIMSTEC members too. And that way, cross-border trucking facilities be allowed within these BIMSTEC members, means Thailand, Myanmar, India, and all the others. That way, the trade and commerce happening in this part could be enhanced a lot. And as on today, Myanmar is exporting quite a good amount of the pulses and other cereals to India, and that is traveling via this one sea route. And if it is possible, then the time taken, the reliability, the cost could be minimized if these roads is fully implemented. That we have to focus on that. And
maybe we reserve some of the points for second round.
Okay.
So that
So
we get
just one last word. So these are the few things we can just visualize. And of course, through this connectivity, the region could be transformed and economically vibrant and socially cooperative region in the years to come. Thank you.
we have already 8 questions loaded on the app, so we have to keep time for 8
Thank you,
questions.
sir.
I'll request other panelists maybe 5 to 7 minutes so that we have a second round and also time to answer questions before that. Thank you.
So, thank you, Chair, and also good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is my privilege to be one of the panelists in the section, and I would like to express my appreciation to the organizers of the conference for giving me opportunity to address issues on land transportation corridor, which is vital for transport and development. So, as you know, South Asia is the second, will be the big consumer market after China, and probably ASEAN is the third in the world largest market for the world market. So, and yesterday and in the morning section, a lot of panelists has pointed out there were many to be done for promoting the trade aid and development, especially in the South Asia region itself. Need to improve the regional trade network. So in the ASEAN community as well, Myanmar can be a hub that can land bridge South Asia with China in the east and also to the other countries of the ASEAN nations. So in terms of land transportation, there are only service that can it is the only service that can handle the door-to-door service. So these kinds of service are always implementing under the BIMSTEC and SASEC and ASEAN Plus 4, ASEAN Plus 3, and other cooperation mechanism. But for the land transportation, there are mainly generally and commonly mode of travel is rail and road transport. So at present, there is no direct reconnection between the South Asia and Myanmar, and also to the between Myanmar and China, and between Myanmar and other ASEAN countries as well. So for the sake of the improvement for the rail, it is difficult to achieve the objectives of obtaining the larger market share in a short time interval, because the Southeast Asia countries and other countries, they do not use the same kind of tracks, which is they don't have the same width of the tracks and the same gauge, not the same gauge, so which is very hard to even standardize it. So therefore, the goods need to be shifted from one wagon to another, and it is not very practical in such a short time. So at present, for the quick wins, rail is not a priority on the list of land transport, but it is obsessed with the long-term master plan for the sustainable development of the trade among the countries. So if you take a look at the road transport, which is a common travel for people and goods using door-to-door service, it is much more promising. So Myanmar have already a road connected with India, and this means that Southeast Asia countries can use the existing road network to promote the trade and development. But the current condition of road corridors are not very much satisfactory. My colleague has already mentioned a lot about it. And the accessibility to these corridors are not enough, and the mobility are not very good as well. So except the fact that it covers any market with wider range of local delivery, as well as less damage to the goods. So for the realization, most of the panelists has already pointed out harmonizing policies and procedures with comprehensive regional framework, which will be part of the self-infrastructure development. So also to minimize the transit time at the border, now there has already been tested for the cargo trucks with the approved seal to minimize time transit delay, but there are still drawbacks concerning with the policy on road transport. So from India's side, they have already proposed a motor vehicle agreement, PVIN, but as Myanmar is already part of a member in the ASEAN countries and already applying the GMS, we would like to propose a cross-transport border as the same as to the neighboring country of GMS and ASEAN. So we are going to sign the GMS in the initial implementing of the cross-border transport agreement with Thailand. And regarding with that one, Myanmar will have the first experience for the land transportation with Thailand and initial implementation of the GMS CBD as well. So we would like to continue the cross-border transport with another neighboring country based on the Myanmar-Thailand CBDA. So on the other hand, there are upgrading hard infrastructure for the trade and development needs a huge amount of investment and also need capacity development on human resources. So India has already been transformed the strategy from its Look East policy to apply as a Ag East policy. And Trilateral Highway is one of the initiatives of India to realize the improvement of trade and development. In Trilateral Highway, Thailand has improved most of the sections that agree among the three countries. And also from the Thailand side, we have second Myauri Thailand-Myanmar Friendship Bridge has already been constructed, and a border control facility is nearly finished, and probably it will be going to utilize in the first quarter of 2019. So apart from that, the other projects initiated by India, such as the Kaladan Multimodal Transit Project, is some of the phases are already been finished, like the waterway channel and the Sitwe Port is finished. And only the section of the road section between the Blewar and the border down at the Zorinpui is not yet finished. So all these actually networks are going to be finished around 2020, and there will have some more access to the Bay of Bengal from the northeast states of the India, such as Manipur. So in addition, so every country has its own plan and strategy for national strategies as well. So these strategies, such as the National Logistic Master Plan for Myanmar Transport and Arterial Road Network and Expressway Master Plan as well, and also regional network master plans such as the Asian Highway Network and ASEAN Highway Network. So in order to align with these long-term plans and implementation of the projects to realization is a base for developing countries like Myanmar. And also, as well as PPP is considered as a potential for the bankable projects as well. So on the other hand, companies from neighboring countries is already now preparing the initial project plans, such as conducting efforts to connect the roads from the border of China to the city of the Rakhine state of Myanmar. So this corridor development is one of the 6 corridors proposed by the Chinese, and it is as part of the Road and Belt initiatives. So after this corridor is finished, China will get access to the Indian Ocean also through Chao Phu Port and SEZ, which will be on the western coastal region of Myanmar. So every country is trying to get the market share opportunity in this way, and also in the Ease of Doing Business Index, India has already got a 80 for the trading cross-border. Bangladesh is around 176 and Myanmar is at 168. So in order to facilitate the border trade, and we have a Ministry of Foreign Affairs in line with the ministries, get the Indian proposal to build the integrated check post at the Tammu end, which is estimated to cost about 2.3 million with the two phases, phase 1 and phase 2. And regarding this proposal, and we have already made meeting with the inline ministries, Ministry of Transport and Communication and Ministry of Construction for the layout plan detail and also harmonize the requirements. And we are going to facilitate the goods and people to avoid the frequent relocation and extension of the ICP. So for the motor vehicle agreement as well, so India has proposed a draft motor vehicle agreement which is based on BBI, and so Myanmar is not a member to BBI, and so it's better the cross-border transport as the same to the neighboring countries of GMS and the ASEAN. So we are still also undertaking to issue the international transport license for the local as well. And we believe that the reliable transport operators and proper road infrastructure are also important for the land transport community. So we believe that it is a good time, and also getting experience from the initial CBDA and GMS CBDA and other cross-border transport agreements such as the context of PIMSEC and BBI and motor vehicle agreement should be discussed later in time. So in conclusion, all countries are trying to promote the trade and development through the soft and hard infrastructure in land transportation, but depending on the experience and capacity, the improvements are still low. Assistance on these challenges through development partners are necessary in order to upgrade these existing mechanisms. So, thank you, Zai.
So thank you. So I'll quickly make my 3 to 5 minute spiel here because we are just severely short of time. So fairly quickly, I'm going to talk from a competitiveness viewpoint. And if I really look at what is happening, there's something very interesting happening in the world in the last 3 to 5 years. And what has happened is that there is this whole huge change in politics and how people are looking at how countries are going to develop, how things are going to change. And quite significantly in the last 2 years, if you really look at with the coming in of President Trump, there is a great opportunity that has arisen. And the opportunity exists in terms of how the global trade is really going to get what I call redefined itself. How China is looking at itself or how India has to look at itself and so on and so forth. So one of the finest opportunities that actually exists for the realignment of global trade has actually happened in the last 2 years. It has never been that significant in the last 70 years before this. Because we've actually followed a very similar norm and so on and so forth. So you're really going to see a change in terms of how global value chains are really going to set themselves up. And how supply chains are really going to happen. So if you really look at a big change that has happened in the last 2 years, we're already seeing that there is a huge shift of manufacturing that has happened towards Malaysia, Indonesia, and so on and so forth. So that's a very positive movement. And I think that's a positive movement from an opportunity point of view and from a prosperity point of view for a lot of countries. Of course, and if you really look at the whole regional trade agreements perspective, European Union is one fine example of how things really happen. That's a great idea of 25 odd countries coming together, look at the kind of opportunity that exists, the prosperity that actually exists there. So if you really look at the whole idea of regional corridors in India, I see it as an economic opportunity which we cannot miss with the kind of changes that have happened. And they lead to many sets of things. Transportation would lead to at least 2 distinct things from my point of view. And those 2 distinct things are going to be the global production networks, how they are actually going to get realigned. We are already seeing that when you talk about global production, you're seeing capacities and you're seeing capabilities getting developed across countries of different sets of the value chain. India works in a certain end, or whatever, and China works at a certain end. Myanmar is on a certain other sets of things. So we are seeing that there is going to be a huge value add that could actually happen over a period of time. So land corridors would actually help us really push what I see as clusters, which are going to be spread out. Typical agglomerations that we've always talked about have been regional agglomerations, and those regional agglomerations have been, there is going to be a place like Bangalore or Siriperumbudur for manufacturing and things. But what I see with this is that you can actually have very spread out production networks, which are really going to get created. So each of the countries can specialize, each of the countries can scale. So if you really want to talk about competition from countries' point of view as well, when you actually have a very interesting country called China, which defines itself on scale, how do countries like India actually compete? Or how do countries like India, Bangladesh, Myanmar, etc., compete with that kind of a thing? So you have to really break up your production systems, talk about scale, and really take it up. Otherwise, you will never be able to achieve the kind of cost advantages that they actually have. So from a very simple business perspective, it makes sense. The second thing that I really look at is the global innovation systems and the global innovation networks that actually get created through these corridors. And the global innovation network is going to be in terms of saying that where is innovation going to happen and for what kind of innovations are going to happen. You would see emergence, and we are already seeing that emergence happen in some parts of India, and I feel that there is going to be an extension in other parts of the region as well. That extension is going to be that if you talk about the Hyderabad belt for, say, pharmaceuticals, or say automotive belt, which has actually emerged in 5 distinct locations in India, you have Thailand, which actually does well. So how do these clusters, like the whole idea of like industrial things like automotives, how they can actually collaborate? They would only collaborate if the transportation network is available. It is not. If you really want to go beyond IT, or if you want to go beyond fab units are interesting, but I think this gives us some interesting opportunity for heavy engineering and industries which require huge movement. You cannot move these things through air transportation and things. So the second thing that actually, and another thing that comes to my mind is about the cost savings that actually accrue because of this. The cost savings are significant. Like if you really look at the average speed of traffic on roads or the systems across this region, is roughly anything between 25 to 30 kilometers per hour. So if we are able to create these corridors, look at the productivity gains that we actually get because of this. And then, of course, one of the speakers did mention something on economic and social development. There is a huge multiplier on social development. Today, the biggest challenge that we actually see in this part of the world is actually about social issues. And the social issues is in terms of the opportunities that actually exist and how do we really take it forward? How do we solve those problems? And this is one of the ideas which can solve it. And the other one is the whole idea of tourism. These corridors seriously help tourism per se. I'll not even say that it is about religious tourism. There is so much else beyond religious tourism that can actually happen within these countries. The movement is exceptional that can happen. I was just looking at numbers, like Istanbul or Turkey as a country gets close to about 35 million tourists each year. India as a country is just very close to 6 million. If we are able to create these corridors, look at the kind of opportunity that actually exists for all the people who actually travel through this. Look at the multipliers that actually happen. From a very simple economic point, it is going to have a multiplier which is going to be huge. I simply believe that it can actually have a multiplier of 8 to 10% on the GDP of various countries if we are able to get it right, which is very, very significant over a period of time if you really look at it. And it does really cause a lot of economic prosperity for all. So thank you for the opportunity. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Respected moderators and panelists and distinguished participants, very vital thing it is discussed here. And Bangladesh believes in connectivity. You know, our state policy is friendship to all and enmity to none. With this concept, we are conducting our foreign policy and trade policy also. So connectivity is very vital for Bangladesh. We have ensured connectivity for the neighboring countries. We have 23 land ports connecting India, Myanmar, Nepal, Bhutan, and also through these land routes, the very nearest China could be connected. So connectivity is very essential for Bangladesh. We believe in business, trade, and also relation. We have the historical relations with the neighboring countries. and also the emotional relations we have. So we are always maintaining the connectivity. Now, connectivity ensures the movement of goods, people, and it ensures the job opportunity and empowerment also. So Bangladesh government is planning in that way so that we can maintain connectivity through land routes. We have also protocol, water protocol, sea protocol with India. And BBN is still waiting. Bangladesh has ratified. Perhaps Bhutan is waiting. Through this connectivity, ultimately the neighboring countries will be benefited. As Mr. Kapoor said, I agree with him. The global scenario has changed. So we have liberalized our system. Our government and the state is very liberal. So we can connect with the seven sisters of India. So we have connectivity with Meghalaya, Agartala, Manipur, these states. Through Dauki Tamabil, we are connecting Meghalaya. And through Banglabanda, we are connecting Nepal. Through Chengrabanda, that is Burimari, we are connecting Bhutan. Our huge tourists are moving through these land routes. Our students are studying in India. And Nepali students are studying medical, students are coming in our country. We have liberalized our sectors. Particularly, we have 5 land ports. They are operated by private sectors under PPP concept. We have a PPP office under PMO, Prime Minister's Office, to oversee all these things. So I think Bangladesh is very much advanced in this respect. So we urge the other countries to come forward. One thing here to mention that the digitization is a factor for the connectivity. But we are somewhat lag behind. We are trying our best to digitize all these things. We are trying to connect the countries, the points with the paperless transaction. Our customs, our immigration, and land ports are working together to work in that fashion so that the paperless transaction could be ensured. Our NSW project, National Single Window Project, has already been passed by ECNEC, and it is under implementation with World Bank assistance. Our digitization also be ensured there. And one thing, another mention, that the Nepal could be benefited by opening up their Kakor Vita. Though it is open, but the land structure is not so standard. It is a challenge. You know, our roads structure should be structured in that fashion because heavy loaded trucks cannot be moved. So we have many projects with the ADB assistance and World Bank assistance. We are trying to make our roads in the 4-lane or 6-lane basis so that the heavy loaded trucks or vehicles could be plied from Bangladesh to Nepal or Bhutan or from other countries and India. We have one land port with Myanmar. Myanmar should be liberalized in that way so that we have planned to construct another land ports at Gundhum to connect Myanmar. Our road has already been constructed. Now Myanmar part has to be ensured so that we can connect Myanmar again. These are the status of our land route corridor with the neighboring countries. Actually, this is very important for us for the development of the common masses of the region. So everybody should join hands together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chakravorty. Thank you, dear panelists. We got very interesting. We got very interesting insights from different countries as well as different fields people are in India. I think the consensus is that definitely there's a lot to be done in this field. The standards for rail, the standards for road is an issue which I think is very important, and unless that is also addressed, the investments will not happen, especially on the rail side. because the transshipment cost and delays would offset the benefits. So this is an important issue which has come up. Then once these roads are actually, or the corridors are taking shape, then you will see a lot of industrial hubs coming up in all the countries. In India, when we are planning this DFC, we are also planning major industrial hubs through DMIC, Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor, which will be focusing on manufacturing at several locations on this corridor. And I'm sure similar developments would happen from wherever such roads or rails will pass through. The hidden, say, the benefit which we have not yet fully exploited is tourism. There's a lot to happen. Once people travel easily, frequently, the confidence of doing such things will increase. With this, I think we have a lot of questions already coming on the screen, as well as you may have in your mind. So I'll now start with the questions. They have focused some questions on some of the speakers. I'll request them to answer that. If not, maybe collectively we will try to answer. So first we start with first question I see on the screen. Bhutan has its own environment concerns on MVA. How are the other BBIN countries addressing their concern for environment through this MVA? I think the full details, I do not know what exactly are the concerns, but obviously the emission standards must be one of the issues. And if anybody else wants to add on this particular point, that what concerns Bhutan has on the MVA, this can be deliberated further. So we do not have any specific, can I get?
Well, as far as the MVA is concerned, we are a long way from implementing it and facing the real challenges of this, because it's obviously one has to understand this is a framework agreement that we have at hand, and which necessarily means that the nitty-gritties, the details of them are to be worked out through bilateral or plurilateral separate agreements, which is going to take a lot of time from now on. The question that was asked was about LDC capacity constraints. Obviously, yes, we have LDCs who are not so well placed to address, to design and implement projects, also having constraints of resource mobilization and so on. Well, one way to overcome this is to look inwards. We also have huge asymmetries in capacity within the sub-region. Some countries are better positioned to implement projects, and also in terms of resource mobilization. And regional cooperation is one way to tap into, one source to tap into, where the sub-regional countries will have to recognize that the transport system, regional transport system, is a public good, which is a mutually beneficial commercial proposition for all participants in it. Obviously, if India is part of an international corridor, it will benefit if that corridor is accessible to both Nepal and Bhutan because of obvious transit revenue benefits, but also several other indirect ways which can dynamically help the sub-region, help even the host countries. Well, apart from regional cooperation, you have several multinational organizations, international organizations which are active in this area, offering their support in several ways, which can also be tapped into. For instance, ESCAP is doing a host of capacity building exercises, starting with its transport sector audit tools to identify specific bottlenecks along in important transport corridors, and also in terms of developing models, the secure cross-border transport model, for instance, then frameworks for road and rail transport, frameworks for implementation of dry ports. We have what we call UN Next, which is a network of experts on paperless trade, which aims to help countries with the procedural reforms at large. So this is one area, and we already have a program to fine-tune some of these tools to the specific needs of LDCs, what we call countries with special needs, CSN. So we have this CSN specific programs going on. So these are, you know, avenues of opportunities to overcome constraints of LDCs, I would say.
I think we can take another question now. Where would countries benefit from enhanced regional and trans-regional connectivity projects in the context of BIMSTEC and ASEAN? I think it's not only the time of transportation, but also the cost, which will make the products competitive. The market, if you compare the BIMSTEC and ASEAN together, if you consider them together, it's a huge market which will have not only the advantage of time and low cost of logistics, the products will also become competitive compared to the global imports they are doing differently now. Any other addition on this, the benefits which will accrue to BIMSTEC?
As for this benefits concern is quite enormous, but some of the things out of these connectivity projects, I just would like to align. India is having Make in India program, and then we are to just attract investment in manufacturing and various other sectors. Well, another connectivity component, what India is taking up is in the next couple of years down the line, or even less than that, Ibohal is going to have the rail connectivity. And the construction work is on in the full swing. And from Ibohal, it will be going to Moderator, then to Mandalay. And China also had already made a program of making the Kunming to this one, Bangkok via Mandalay, and the Ruli, the border town, and Mandalay, the construction work, they had already signed the MOU. And that way, our BIMSTEC and the ASEAN connectivity, that will be coming up. But the challenge over here is that the track is the broad gauge, you know, this one, system in India. However, in the Myanmar side, that is Sagaing region, the Kalimio and this Mongya to this Mandalay, the track is in the meter gauge. So it is not compatible. So that's why we have to see to it that compatibility. And once it is true, obviously the cost of transport and the entire manufacturing, the global manufacturing hub in India is envisioning, I believe there will be lot much of value addition in terms of economic and economies of scale for the sharing of skill and the labor forces in this region. This is how we may be able to produce competitive products the world over. Okay, thank you.
The next question is, what is the potential role for sub-regional projects such as BBI and MVA to promote regional connectivity? I think if you consider the trilateral highway, which has been already talked about, India, Myanmar, Thailand, then immediately there is connectivity possible for Bangladesh, Bhutan, and Nepal through the same corridor. So these subsets with the main trilateral highway will have a ready approach till Thailand, and then the connecting internal roads would also get developed or converted to national highway, as we call them. So I think this is going to have a significant impact on the entire value chain of delivery and manufacturing. We are short of time. I'll quickly go through the questions and you can add from the panel. What gaps and opportunities for investment exist in national and subnational transport infrastructure, regulatory environment, and digital innovation? Yes, my reply to this is yes, we all have different methods of handling the transport, the emissions, the custom clearances, and digital levels are also different. You want to add to this, sir? Okay, okay. Joseph, you want to comment on this because there is a level of difference in the environment,
yeah.
regulatory environment?
a regulatory environment and standardization of infrastructure also, like the gauge break which was repeatedly mentioned. Well, in ESCAP, when the transport project was started, it was started with a survey for the entire Asia Pacific region way back in 1960s and 70s, early 70s. It's culminated in what is now known as the Asian Highway Network and the Trans-Asian Railway Network, which are operating on the basis of intergovernmental agreements where countries have made specific commitments. Now, gauge break, if you take the TAR network, it's an issue. It's like the entire Asia Pacific, we have 7 different gauges, seven different gauges. We have plenty of examples where in other parts of Asia Pacific where this issue has been addressed and successfully found solutions for. We don't have to go very far. We have what is called a GULT train or ITI train, which runs from Istanbul in Turkey to Islamabad in Pakistan. And as soon as you enter Iran's territory from Pakistan, there is this gauge break again, which happens at Sahedan. There are models, there are technological solutions for this. So harmonization is perfectly possible. And we have, the good thing is we have a lot of examples to cite from, the one challenge which we have not touched upon detail is about the commercial aspects of it. Now the regulatory aspect of connectivity, the infrastructural aspect of connectivity, if it is to be sustainable, if it is to be commercially, attractive proposition, then it needs to be linked with businesses. So that's one area where the discussion is not complete in this sub-region. We loosely talk about converting transport corridors into economic corridors, but how to do that is the real question. So how to link production with connectivity, how can we build manufacturing hubs, economic activities around it in a synergic fashion is one area we need more and more discussions on, I would say.
I request you to wrap up in about a minute. Yes. After this, we'll take 2 questions from the floor and then we conclude. Yeah, we'll come to you, sir.
Hi, I'm from Manipur, Chamber of Commerce and Industry from Manipur. In this South Asia Summit, it's a request which I'll put up in the end of the appraisal I'd like to give to the House. Now that from South Asia, the Southeast Asia is unlocking at the borders of Manipur, I'd like to apprise the House that till 1st of December 2015, there was a border trade allowed on barter system. So around that time, the annual trade was about $52 million per annum. And once the 1st of December 2015, when the border trade was closed down, the trade had come down to 0. I'm talking about formal trade. Now on 8th of August 2018, the border trade is open. The ICP is ready. You can have an e-visa for Indians to go to Myanmar. But there are 2 things happening here. On 8th of, even after 8th of August till today, the trade is 0 for 2 reasons. Number one, when we talk about the tourism, Myanmarese tourism coming into India, we're talking about tourism as such. It's quite surprising that Indian government, or rather the Indian side, is not allowing e-visa for Myanmaris. So we have had situations where when the Myanmar citizens came all the way to the border, they had to go back to Mandalay or Yangon to get a visa stamped. So that's where the health tourism or the pilgrimage tourism, whichever way, is not actually taking off, number one. On the trade side, what is happening is that Myanmar government is yet to give the transit tax permit. So if you have to get a third country, a product from third country, from Thailand or from China, we cannot, because Myanmar government is imposing a total tax of the country on the goods to be brought into India. Another important situation here is that Myanmar is building a port inland. We're talking about inland maritime port where the connectivity could be with the Northeast India. A Simaikon port at Mandalay on Irrawaddy River connects Manipur and Mizoram through the Chinwin River at Kalimio port, which is about 150 kilometers away from the Moreh border. That's going to be our future opportunity as far as trade is concerned. So our request to the South Asia Summit, which is happening today, is that the fact that now the eastern side is also unlocking, we'll be glad to have more of the ASEAN side also aspect included in such seminars in the future, because the South Asia also that there will be, I think, a wider perspective. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Important feedback, and I think we have a director from Land Port Authority present here. Your feedback about Moray definitely will be passed on. And we are also working on inland water transportation solutions with Myanmar and wherever possible with Bangladesh, etc. So your point is noted. We'll take two floors, questions from the floor, please.
This is Abhishek Basnet from US Embassy, Kathmandu. My question is especially for panelists from Nepal, India, and Bangladesh. What role can India play to improve the connectivity trade between Nepal and Bangladesh? Thank you.
Okay, can I start? I think the mega projects which we are implementing, they have to be connected with Nepal and Bhutan, Bangladesh, because they also get approach to other ports. Dedicated freight corridors, highways. One important development which has already happened in these three countries is all of us have started doing integrated checkposts. I have seen Petrapol, I have seen Birganj, I have seen on the Pakistan side also. This has really helped in the transit time. What used to take days is now taking hours. So if your trucks, if your passengers are able to cross like an airport-like situation, there will be ease of traveling by road. So this is already done. Beginning has been done in last 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Lot to be done because we are looking at about 1 dozen such transit points from India side also. Any other addition from Nepal side you want to add your feedback on this particular question? And we have to be a little brief because about a minute we must wrap up this.
So the BIN MVA is one potential tool to achieve that. But again, the protocol, now it should be distinctly better than existing arrangements that we already have for Nepal's trade with Bangladesh via Kakarbitta-Fulbari corridor. So procedural simplification as reflected in the potential protocol, that would be crucial. And I think it's not just only a question of the role of India, but there are also some things to be done within the border. For example, even on the Nepali side, in Kakarbitta, the point through which we trade with Bangladesh via India, simple introduction of Asikoda World that is in the making but is yet to be implemented. If that happens, then at the minimum, the time taken to process things there would be reduced by at least 6 to 8 hours, and that is required. That is something. So there are some national level initiatives to be taken, but ultimately a trilateral arrangement or an agreement between the three countries for not just bilateral trade with Bangladesh via India, but trade with third countries via India and Bangladesh. That, I think, is important to address the needs and concerns of a landlocked country. Thank you.
Comments from Bangladesh on this? Any particular observation about what can be done? Why by India alone, all of us together to facilitate movement?
Actually, Bangladesh is situated in a very strategic position. So as Nepal and Bhutan are the landlocked countries, Bangladesh also is ready to extend hands for the connectivity. They can utilize our Chittagong port and Mongla port also. We are constructing another deep sea port, that is Paira port. So these are all for connectivity. We believe in connectivity. We like to ensure international trade with neighboring countries and also with the globe. So our hand is open. So our door is open. So everybody should come.
Good.
Forward.
Maybe last question and okay, so there's no question. Thank you very much. Thank you, panelists. Really very interesting feedback from different countries, different fields. And definitely thank you, participants, for very patient hearing and very active involvement. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much, Rajeev ji. And I thank all the panelists for their insights into this most important topic, which is, I think, the basic of our regional connectivity conference also. Land transport is very important. And now I would request my colleague to please present the E-Tree certificates as mementos, as recognition for our speakers. Yeah, it's a new concept. Yeah, through this we are making the world greener and probably a bit more free of pollution. So just a round of applause for everybody on the dais. I thank everyone, and I would also request everyone to move for lunch now to Rani Bagh Hall. And before we proceed for lunch, I have another announcement that after this session, we would have other 3 sessions going on. In this hall, we would be having the cyber security session, which has the coding of red color on your badges. And in parallel track 2, we have border security, balancing security and trade facilitation session in the Mumtaz Hall. And then there's intellectual security, intellectual property rights and technology transfer session going on in the Jahangir room, which has the purple coding. So thank you all for being here. We can now all proceed for lunch, and we'll all again come back here exactly at 1:30. I would all request you to please gather here on time after lunch. Thank you very much.